Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm Myrna Lawyer, Blackbright News, and this particular video is prompted by a request to discuss sexual assault. Now, sexual assault is quite rampant. In South Africa, it's 40% of women have been assaulted. In America, someone is assaulted every 96 seconds. And in England, 1 in 4 women have been sexually assaulted. With this background, I was one of those women. And I didn't really plan to talk about my journey or what I went through. But I'm going to, because the thing is that when you have an experience like that, it changes your whole perception, especially when you're a young girl, as I was at the time. I was somebody who was very happy-go-lucky, helpful, and I remember walking in my local village, and I remember seeing a man, and he had 2 crutches. And he had a bag in one of his hands, and he was limping with his leg in a plaster of Paris. And I said to him, "Do you need any help?" And he said, "Yes, that would be good." Anyway, I helped him to his house, totally innocent. I must have been about 16, 17, and totally innocent. I took him to his house. I put the bag down and he said, "Oh, will you take the bag inside for me?" The next thing I knew, I was on the floor. Now, this poem that I'm going to read to you, that I wrote after it happened because I had no one to talk to. I felt guilty, I felt dirty, and I felt damaged. And I couldn't tell anyone. So this is the poem I wrote to get it out of my system. No Jezebel was she, flaunting her plumage and strutting gracefully, while he struggled with his crutches, his shopping bag, and insecurity. Like the Good Samaritan, she helped him to his home, not realizing that he was scheming to get her all alone. Outside his front door, she stood there nervously. "Please help me take the bags inside," he asked her courteously. She put the heavy bags down. Then he opened the door, and suddenly he grabbed her by the hand and forced her to the floor. She screamed into the wind that swept her cries away, membranes thawing like ice melting in the heat of a summer day. Her plumage all awither, her strut a hobbled home, her clemency disoriented, her flaunt, her piteous form. The reception from her mother stopped her in her track. "Next time I send you to the shops, don't stop, but come straight back." And that's what it was like. I couldn't even tell my mother what happened. And, I can imagine, when you think about what happens when something like that happens, number one, you start questioning your judgment. And as a young girl, I questioned that legacy of questioning my judgment affects me even to this day. Sometimes I still second guess myself. You still kind of want to trust people. You still want to accept people. You want to help people. But that thing in the back of your mind that tells you, oh, you helped that person and look what happened. It was your fault. And I'd imagine a lot of young girls, even boys, could have been in my situation. Yes, it could have been my fault. I was naive to follow a man home. So technically, yes, somebody can say, well, serves you right. But in that moment, I genuinely thought I was helping somebody with their bags. I really thought I was being the Good Samaritan. And it's not all the time even that can happen in that scenario. Sometimes it's much more dramatic. Sometimes people are actually pushed in the bushes and raped. You have rape in, husbands rape their wives because they feel they've got a right. Some people, they're sodomized. You know, there's unwelcome touches. And, you know, I was listening to a program the other night, and it was talking about how husbands, especially now, are afraid to touch their wives when they give them the cold shoulder because they don't want it to be viewed as abuse. So even husbands now are very skeptical about touching their wives because of the new laws and how sensitive it is to know how to touch and when it's consensual. They used to say when a woman says no, she means yes. And I believe that sometimes it used to be the case way back when a woman wanted to be prim and she wanted to be, you know, not seen as easy. So she would pretend that she didn't want to be kissed. But as we evolve, that doesn't happen anymore. When a woman says no, she means no. And there's more than enough women who are out there who are eager and who want it and who do say yes. So if a woman says no, she means no, especially in this day and age. And I know that people get mixed signals. And, you know, some of these women, the way they dress, some people will say, well, she's asking for it. But with the advent of this new way of exposing your body and flattering your body and enhancing your body, it doesn't mean that a woman is asking for it. But the funny thing I've noticed is that even when a woman is flaunting her body now, men don't seem to blink. I think it's happening so much that they're not fazed by it. You know, sometimes I watch Love Island and I watch how the women are walking in these half naked bikinis that are got thongs on, and the men don't even bat an eyelid. And in those situations, they are getting to know the women. So, you know, I don't know why it's happening at such a large pace, at such a big pace now, when women and men are able, you haven't got the stigma, and yet it still happens. And what's happening is it's the younger people who are being abused, or the ones who are looking. I know a woman that I think she was in her 50s or 60s or something. It's almost like the untouchables are being abused. And I don't know what's going on in the minds of men, whether they abuse men or women. It doesn't matter. The effect is the same. The impact is the same. You still feel as though you've been damaged. You still feel as though you're dirty. You still feel as though there is something wrong with your judgment, and you still grow up feeling untrusting. Over time, you do get it out of your system, especially if, like me, I'm a poet, I'm a writer. So I wrote mine out of my system over the years. But for those who don't have that skill and who cannot articulate how they're feeling, and there's no one to articulate it to, they carry that sense of low self-esteem, low self-worth right through to their adulthood. And the impact of it on relationships and on friendships and on, you know, regardless of who that other person is, it doesn't even have to be the opposite sex. That damage has been done to that individual. From you have violated an individual, the damage has been done. Because that person then feels as though she doesn't have a right. Nobody was listening. And they took what they wanted, and they didn't listen to her or her screams. So it's difficult when you're dealing with trying to explain the impact when that happens, especially with women who are married and they, you know, there's something that they might not want to tell their husband because they don't want to be judged by it. A lot of men, if they feel as though their wife has been violated in that way, they don't want to know her. And if a woman was to say that she'd been raped or violated in some other way, she's afraid how that person is going to perceive her. So she's not going to tell a partner, and she's going to carry that with her. And while she's carrying that with her, she's not going to be herself, because each time she's going to wonder, I wonder if he's going to find out. She's going to have that reservation about if he would love her if he knew what she'd been through. So it's not a nice thing to go through. And you know, for those who get through it, or if you have been sexually assaulted, do try to seek help. If you don't feel confident going out and seeking help, write about it. They reckon journaling is the best source of healing. It's private. You can cuss as much as you want. You can cuss the perpetrator as much as you want. And it's yours. It's your anger, your vengeance, and you can tear it up afterwards. Nobody needs to know. So, and yet you get it out of your system. The most important thing is to get it out of your system. But like I said, you know, when you're thinking that it happens so frequently in America every 96 seconds, my goodness. I mean, I know America is big, but bloody hell. 1 in 4 women in the UK. And 40% of the women in South Africa. Well, I don't know if it said woman. I think it just said sexual assault. And maybe they all just said sexual assault. You know, my mind just defaulted there to women. But yeah, you know, men are being assaulted just as much as women. And even more so now that we have, you know, same-sex relationships. A lot of men are being abused. And with the transvestites and goodness knows what. So it's not just women now. It's anybody who they feel as though they can exploit in a certain situation and take advantage of. So you've just got to be careful. You've just got to educate. And, you know, if somebody, if you do sense that somebody does want to talk, just listen. Don't judge. Because it's very difficult when you're going through something like that not to judge. But people do. And when, as a child, looking for somebody to talk to or somebody to share that with, it's very, very difficult because that child will feel guilty and will feel responsible and will feel as though she played a big part in what happened to her. So I think that's enough on that one. So bye for now.